You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orlick, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. Have you ever started a simple conversation with your partner, like, hey, can you put your socks in the hamper? Only for it to turn into an existential debate about respect, priorities, and whether you actually love each other? Well, if this sounds familiar, congrats, you're in a relationship. And also, you're probably stuck in a cycle you don't even realize is happening. So, what we're going to cover today is what attachment theory actually is in real life terms, how conflict cycles work and why they tend to repeat themselves, and the number one shift that helps you break free from them. And don't worry, this is not another just communicate better lecture, because let's be real, if that worked, you wouldn't be here. Okay, so what is attachment theory? You've probably heard the term before, but let's break it down in a way that actually makes sense in real life. Here are the basics. Attachment theory is the way we learn to connect and feel safe in our relationships. It's something that's developed in childhood, but it tends to play out in our adult relationships. So, in childhood, we are programmed with everything that happens and all the messages received. They're just directly downloaded into our bodies and into our minds. Sometimes they're really explicit, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're more implicit, just things that we learn from our environment. And there are a few different kinds of attachment styles. So, first, there's secure attachment, where we trust our partner, we trust the people in our lives, and we really engage in repair. There's anxious, where we're really constantly scanning for signs of rejection and abandonment and scared that anything could happen between our partner that would leave us feeling alone. And then there's avoidant, where we tend to feel overwhelmed by that closeness and we pull away. But on a deeper level, we do want that closeness. It just feels scary. So here's an example. Imagine you text your partner, hey, what's for dinner? And they don't respond for 3 hours. A secure person might assume, oh, they're busy. They'll get back to me later. An anxious person may start to spiral. Oh no, did I say something wrong? Are they angry at me? What happened? Maybe that thing that happened last night wasn't actually okay. And an avoidant person might think, okay, now I have to text back or they're going to be upset. And what do I need to do to avoid conflict? Can you see how the same situation hits people really differently? That's how attachment works. Multiple people can experience the same event and have really different experiences of that same event. This reminds me of the first time that I ever made dinner for my now husband. So we had a plan that he would come over after he taught a dance lesson. And I knew what time the lesson was. I knew how long the lesson would be and about how long it would take him to get to my apartment. And so I started planning dinner and I started cooking dinner to time it correctly for when he would get there so it would still be warm. And that time came and it went. And I didn't hear from him. And more time went. And I started getting anxious and angry. And the thoughts that went through my mind are, I'm not cared about. I'm not respected. My time isn't valued. And it just started to increase that pressure inside of me. And eventually he came over. It was probably an hour or so later than I thought it would be. And when he got there, he had no idea that anything had happened. And I was furious. And what did he do? He shut down. He got really quiet. all expression left from his face. I couldn't read him, and I got even more anxious. What was happening for him? He saw this angry person on the other side of the door. I don't even think I said hello. And all of a sudden, the fear that he experiences was channeled by pulling away and protecting himself from being vulnerable. Ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're protecting ourselves from being vulnerable, either the vulnerability of being alone, of being rejected, of being uncared for, or the vulnerability of being in the conflict, of having emotions that don't get cared about, that it's not safe to bring forward. And that's where couples get stuck. So, how does understanding this actually change how couples approach conflict? Well, what you have to understand is that all of these hurts, all of these reasons why we are the way we are, they don't start in that relationship. There may be things that happen in that relationship that create new sensitivities, but it doesn't all start there. It starts a long time ago with how we're trained in emotions. By growing up, we have our families, our culture, our school, other kids. We're told if emotions are okay or not. And what our society has done a really good job of for a really long time is invalidating all emotion. Children are born experiencing big emotions and learning about them, and we don't teach them anything about how emotions are okay. And I think that that's something that we're learning more as a society of how to teach our kids to understand their emotions and to regulate in healthy ways as opposed to shutting down or getting really dysregulated. For example, I was at the park the other day with my son, and this other child started crying. I looked over and he was clutching his ankle. And all of a sudden, I hear from the other side of the playground is this child's mother telling him to get up. And as she was coming towards him, she asked him, "Are you a boy? Why are you crying? You're always crying." And it just broke my heart because that child was told that what he's experiencing doesn't matter to the person that's supposed to love and care about him the most. And this is a period of time when he is starting to develop his attachment style. If he's developing an anxious attachment style, he may turn towards getting louder, crying more, getting more attention so that he can try to connect with his mom. If he has more of an avoidant attachment style, he may learn to compartmentalize his hurts and his feelings and not bring them up with his mom because that's the only way she'll accept him. The reason why this is really important is that you're coming into a relationship with somebody who has a pre existing framework for how they understand the world, how they make meaning of the world, and how their neurobiology and their brains react to situations in the world. And it's all in an effort to keep them safe. So when you see their reaction, it may not make sense to you. And it may actually end up triggering something in you based on your own attachment system. And once you can see it through this different lens, then you can work towards depersonalizing that behavior and start understanding it. Take a second and think. When you feel disconnected in your relationship, do you tend to lean in and seek reassurance? Or do you need space to figure things out? Do you get anxious when your partner is quiet? Or do you start to become wary and pull away so that you don't rock the boat? Now, we're focusing a lot on the avoidant and the anxious attachment styles. But that's not to say that with secure attachment, you never have conflict. You absolutely do. People with a secure attachment just tend to trust the process a little bit more. They tend to see their partner's reactions less personally, become more curious about them, and feel more secure in their relationship. So it doesn't create that intense vulnerability and fear of rejection. That way, when they have conflict, it's not that it feels good, but they can work through it and develop even more confidence in their relationship and trust in their partner. And while our baseline attachment styles may not change, they may always be there in times of stress. Our attachment style in a relationship, one particular relationship, can change as we work to develop more security and space for safety in that relationship. That's how we develop more feelings of being valued, cared for, loved, important. And we feel like we both have enough space to be creative and independent and playful, but also enough closeness to feel secure. Now that we understand how attachment impacts the way we respond to stress, let's talk about how this plays out in your actual arguments, the conflict cycles that you get stuck in again and again. This leads me to talking about this pattern that we see in relationships. This is why you get stuck in the same fight. This dynamic that we're talking about is the pursuer withdrawer dynamic. So, the pursuer, who tends to be the more anxious partner, wants to talk about things now, wants to feel better, wants to reconnect, but initially they may come across as critical, sharp in their tone, angry. They may get loud. They may ask a lot of questions or feel like they're poking at an issue. What's happening underneath is that they're scared. They want to connect with their partner. They want to know that they're important. And so they keep trying to find a way for their partner to engage. The withdrawer, on the other hand, starts to shut down. They're more avoidant. So they get scared of making things worse. They get scared of having their fears about not being important confirmed, or their fears of being a failure, of being rejected by their partner and not accepted. So they tend to avoid and withdraw as a way to protect themselves. This is their wall that they put up. And the more the pursuer pushes, the more the withdrawer pulls away, and repeat and repeat. So you're constantly stuck in this same cycle. This is important. If you're the pursuer, your instinct is to push forward, to try to reconnect. If you're the withdrawer, you're wanting more space because you feel flooded, or you're scared that anything you do will result in more escalation. But the more the pursuer pushes, the more the withdrawer withdraws. And if you're the withdrawer, the more you withdraw, the more your partner will push. This is where couples get stuck. And now let's start talking about how to shift it. What's happening in these cycles and why you're not getting any movement is that we tend to focus on what's happening. So we tend to focus on the socks that are left on the floor, or the garbage, or the fact that you came over to my house late for dinner, rather than focusing on what's underneath, why that hurts, what that tells me. And we get stuck in the same pattern because we're not addressing the emotions underneath. We think that if we explain it correctly, if we show our partner the facts, if we get them to understand it from our point of view, then we will have this big change. They'll stop feeling hurt. They'll want to connect more with us, and everything will go back to the way it was. And we actually can then do that without any vulnerability. And that's just not true. As a way to get out of these cycles, we actually have to talk about what's happening within the cycle, within this pursue withdraw cycle. Or you may actually find yourself in a withdraw cycle where you both tend to shut down and avoid conflict, and then are constantly thinking that your partner doesn't care about you because they're not reaching out to you or they're not seeking to understand. So we get caught in this pattern of over explaining, more frustration, feeling unseen, feeling unappreciated or undervalued. And then we over explain again, hoping that this time it'll be different. This time they will understand. I see this every day with my clients. We get stuck in, well, you didn't do the laundry correctly, or you forgot to pick up the corn that I asked for from the store. And we forget to talk about why that hurt, what that tells me. So, for example, going back to my example with my then boyfriend, now husband, what it told me that he was so late and didn't call was that I wasn't important to him. And if that was my truth of the situation, of course I would be really hurt. And when we get hurt, it tends to come out as anger. And he didn't realize he was doing anything that was hurting me. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. I think, in hindsight, he said, I should have called, or I should have texted you to let you know, or we should have had better expectations going into it. But he didn't understand how that was really going to impact me. And if he did, he certainly would have done it differently because he cared about my feelings. But we tend to get caught also in this pattern of perfectionism. If I just find the perfect words, it won't trigger my partner. And you don't need the perfect words. What we're all seeking is understanding, acknowledgement, and validation for our experience. But what we tend to do is actually dismiss and invalidate our partner's experience as a way to get our experience better understood. So again, those of us who have been successful in other areas of our life tend to go towards logic as a way to try to resolve issues and get out of the cycle. However, emotions don't work like that. It's not like a piece of code that you can just plug something else into and have a different outcome. This is another person. You actually have to understand their emotions and do something different to get out of the cycle. And I'm going to share a little bit about how to do that. But before we jump into that, I just want to address, if this feels frustrating, like, oh my God, why can't we just stop this pattern already? You're not alone. Even people who have been practicing this for a long time, we still get stuck in our own patterns because we're human. These cycles are deeply wired, and shifting them takes practice. But the good news is that once you see the pattern, then you have the power to change it. The pattern. These old attachment wounds, these old traumas, these old ways that we make meaning of our situation, that we view our partner, that we see safety or not safety around us. This is what is coming up. So the very first step is really to recognize that you're in the cycle. And instead of reacting in that old way that you may have done before, like getting defensive or getting angry or trying to logic your way out of it, but we need to take a step back. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're in this cycle. Let's do something different here. So really starting to then slow down and name what's happening. I feel really stuck here. I'm noticing that I'm trying to explain things and you're getting quieter and shutting down more. Or maybe I'm trying to explain things and you're getting angrier. You're getting more hurt. I wonder if I'm actually dismissing what you feel. So really noticing that tendency to want to over-explain what's happening for you, which may then end up dismissing what your partner is feeling. And I think a really big part of this is prioritizing connection over being right. The goal here isn't to win. You don't get a prize. There's nothing that comes with it other than feeling more disconnected from your partner. So maybe considering a little bit about, why is it important for you to feel right? Does that mean to you that your partner won't reject you, that you'll be seen as competent? Was there a time in your history where being wrong was really difficult and you had a really hard time with that in school or with your parents? Thinking about what might lead into this pattern that you have of maybe trying to get the one up on one another, or why it feels so important to be right in that situation and have your partner see it from your perspective. Really, the goal is to understand what is happening underneath the surface, underneath the facts, underneath the content. What is happening emotionally for you? How can you share that and be a little bit more vulnerable? And how can you understand what's happening for your partner, allowing them to feel more safe with you, to open up and be more vulnerable with you? Rarely in my entire career have I experienced where one partner has been really vulnerable and the other partner just rejects them for it. Really, every time I'm in session with a client and their partner opens up and is emotional and doesn't blame them and just shares their own pain, the partner has always said, I feel so much closer to you. It really hurts to hear that. There is a part of me that maybe feels defensive because I feel misrepresented in what you're seeing. But I really want to lean towards you because I feel compassion for the pain that you're experiencing. And that helps their partner feel so much safer to open up and de escalate or come down from their anger and also be more understanding and open with you. So, this concept of connection can be a little bit vague. And the way that I have learned to describe it over the years is to call it not being alone. Ultimately, we feel connected when we don't feel alone in our world, when we know that there's some safe place that we can go. And what we're really shooting for is that safe place being our partner. You really invest a lot in that person and you want them to be your safe home base. So, seeing if you can really slow down this process, think of it as trying to walk through molasses. Instead of going directly towards the facts or the explaining, which I think is putting the cart before the horse, we have to feel like we're not alone. Once we feel connected, like we're working as a team, then we can more readily understand what's happening. We can see the facts differently. We can problem solve more effectively. So, again, it's not about finding the perfect words. It's about going to a more vulnerable part of yourself and slowing down and listening more. Try just saying, hey, we're stuck in our cycle. Can we hit pause? Can we try again? I really want to understand you better. I feel like there's part of what I'm going through that you don't understand too. So I want us to find safety and be able to talk about this together. Seeing if you can place your attention more on curiosity. Instead of going towards, they always pull away from me, I can never rely on them. Maybe question, what is making them withdraw? What's going on in our cycle that they're not feeling safe to open up with me? Maybe instead of thinking they never listen, maybe asking yourself, what is it that I feel unheard right now? What would help me feel more understood? Being more curious creates more space. That's really a lot of what I do in a session with clients, is that I create more of a space for curiosity and exploration. When we blame, when we point fingers, when we let go of our own responsibility to put that responsibility on our partner, it starts to create walls. It's not a safe space for two people to come to the table together. And you really need that safety in order to repair. And so that brings me to this last part. The goal is really to repair, even if it's something that just feels really small. So owning your own reaction, your own part of the cycle. Hey, I know I got really frustrated. What I really want to do is understand you better. So that little bit of owning your part of the cycle, sharing a little bit about yourself, being more curious about them, it starts to repair. When we feel more repaired, then this isn't a situation that keeps coming up again and again over time. When we feel repaired, it's closed. We forgive and we move forward and we learn from it. We're able to problem solve more effectively. We feel much closer and more connected to our partner. We feel more valued. We feel more understood. We feel like we're working as a team. So being able to let go of those walls of having to have your perspective be agreed with. The goal should be having your perspective understood and knowing that your partner really cares about the impact of what this cycle had on you. When you really trust that, and when your partner really trusts that with you, then you repair and you feel like you're not alone anymore. So to sum it up really quickly, to get out of this cycle that you have again and again, which means you're having the same argument again and again. It's like volcanoes. It's the same lava underneath the Earth's crust, but it's just coming out in different volcanoes. So to get out of that cycle, it's really about slowing it down, being more curious, taking responsibility or acknowledging your part of the cycle, prioritizing connection and not letting your partner be alone over being right, shifting away from blame, and working towards repair. As you do this more frequently and you get more practice, your body starts to remember, and these little conflicts don't feel as threatening anymore. And then your body and your mind don't automatically go towards those danger signals. Those alarm bells don't have to go off all the time anymore. And we slowly move towards a more securely connected relationship with our partner. All right, so let's wrap up today's session. Today we covered how attachment styles shape conflict, why couples get stuck in cycles, and a simple mindset and process shift to start breaking free from these old cycles that keep you stuck again and again. So, a final thought. Next time you argue, don't focus on fixing the topic. Just focus on noticing the pattern. That alone can change everything. If you've been nodding along during this episode thinking, this is exactly what happens in my relationship, but I don't know how to stop it, I made something for you. It's a free 7-day email course called Break the Cycle. Each day, I'll walk you through simple steps to stop the same fight from repeating and start rebuilding real connection without shutting down, walking on eggshells, or trying to do it all perfectly. You can sign up at my website. I'll link it in the show notes. It's totally free. This isn't just about communication. It's about breaking patterns that are breaking you. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorlick.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.